Welcome to Karma Chronicles. Please like the video and subscribe. Let's begin.
I was barely through the front door before the smell of maple bacon and burnt coffee hit me like a wave. Same old spread, same old crowd. Labor Day brunch at my mom's house in Evanston wasn't optional. It was mandatory. Like a family tax you paid in small talk and passive-aggressive compliments. My name's Valerie. I'm 29, live in downtown Chicago, and apparently I'm the cautionary tale of the family. No husband, no kids, no impressive job title. I stepped into the living room, and there they were. All of them. Cousins, aunts, uncles, already halfway into mimosas and mini quiches. My mom waved me over like I was late for my own sentencing. Uncle Dean, of course, had the floor. Bald, loud, and always in a blazer, even when it's 85 degrees out. 3 orthopedic clinics, golf every Thursday. Thinks he's God's gift to entrepreneurship. All right, time for the update round, he boomed, clapping his hands. Let's go around. 1 minute each. Just give us your wins this year. Nobody objected. This had become his tradition, like Christmas carols, but for inflated egos. Britt went first. I just got promoted to VP of Strategy over at Wellvia, she said, her tone casual but her grin sharp. We're rolling out a new gene therapy line next quarter. Applause, cheers. Champagne glass clinks. Her brother Sean followed. Landed a TED Talk slot last week. They're flying me out to San Francisco in October. Gonna talk about AI-driven diagnostics. More applause, a high five from Dean. Then came Maya, my sister, the golden one. My team just took over the Coca-Cola campaign for EMEA, so I'll be between Atlanta and London for a while. Of course she would be. She could sell ice to Eskimos and still make it look humble. Then all eyes landed on me. I didn't move, just kept holding my teacup with both hands. Before I could open my mouth, my mom chimed in. Valerie's still at that logistics company downtown. Very reliable work. Ah, Dean said, like he'd just diagnosed a patient with mild arthritis. Good to hear. Steady is solid. I nodded, took a sip of my tea, didn't blink, because if I did, someone would see it. Quick note. Before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. My jaw tightened, but I didn't let it show. They were already shifting to the next cousin. Reliable? That's what I was. Not impressive, not ambitious, just reliable. I sat down, back straight, smiled like I was fine with all of it. Then I popped a grape tomato in my mouth just to keep it shut. Dean was already teeing up the next round of questions, and I knew damn well I was just getting started. Dean clapped once, loud enough to get everyone's attention again. Okay, now let's dig in. Updates are good, but I want to hear details. What's next for everyone? He turned toward Britt first, because of course he did. She leaned forward like she'd been waiting for the spotlight. Well, the VP role means I'll be managing 2 global teams now. We're piloting a cross-border regulatory strategy in the EU, which is huge for Wellvia. I might relocate to Zurich for 6 months. The table practically hummed with approval. Someone muttered, wow. Someone else said, impressive. Britt beamed like she'd just been knighted. Sean jumped in before the applause even died down. We just got another round of funding, $17 million from a VC in Boston. I've got 3 new hires coming on board this fall, and we're opening a new office in Denver. Dean raised his glass. That's what I'm talking about. Ownership, vision, next level moves. Maya wasn't going to let herself fall behind. She brushed her hair off her shoulder and said, we're finalizing a deal with Unilever. If it goes through, I'll lead their North American rebranding strategy through the second quarter next year. There was an audible gasp, like someone had dropped a wine glass, but it was just admiration. And I sat there, chewing on a bagel that had gone cold, nodding like I wasn't mentally counting down the minutes till this ended. Dean's eyes landed on me. So, Valerie, he said, dragging out the syllables like he had to search for my name. What exactly do you do over there at that logistics place? Sorting packages. I smiled, tight, quick. Operations? That was accurate. It wasn't enough, but it was true. Britt gave me that smile she saves for cashiers who forget to bag her almond milk. Well, supply chain is very in demand right now, especially with the global disruptions. It's a good field. Yeah, but you should really look into automation platforms, Sean added. You know, AI-driven route optimization, predictive inventory stuff. That's where it's all going. Maya nodded like she was co-signing a mortgage. Actually, one of our directors used to work at DHL. If you're interested, I can introduce you. Could be a step up. That one made me pause, Because it wasn't even fake nice. It was real, real condescending. I took a sip of water. I'm good where I am. Silence. Dean blinked. Britt adjusted her watch like time had just slowed down. Sean raised an eyebrow, the kind of look that said, "Really?" That's it. I could feel the judgment crawl across the table like smoke. They didn't have to say it out loud. Their faces were already spelling it out for me. They thought I'd plateaued, tapped out early, settled. Well, Dean said finally, dragging the mood forward, as long as you've got a plan, just don't get too comfortable. Comfort doesn't scale. That was his favorite line. Heard it for 10 years straight. Comfort doesn't scale. Neither does a family that talks to you like you're an intern on a warning. Before we continue, how's your day going and where are you joining from? Britt crossed her legs and leaned closer. Have you ever thought about moving into project strategy? You'd be great with the right mentor, someone to guide you. She needs more than a mentor, Sean said. She needs exposure. She's got tunnel vision. I pushed my plate forward. I was done eating. My stomach wasn't going to take much more. Honestly, I like what I do, I said. That shut them up again, not because they believed it, but because they didn't understand it. And when people don't understand something, they either try to fix it or ignore it altogether. Maya gave a half laugh. Well, hey, whatever works. Just don't let yourself get stuck. I'm not stuck, I said. Then I stood up and went to refill my coffee. Mostly to end the conversation, but partly because if I sat there a second longer, I might have said something that would have turned brunch into a full-on brawl. I was still pouring my coffee when Dean cleared his throat like he was about to make a TED Talk of his own. You ever think about getting your MBA, Val? He said, loud enough for the whole table to hear. Supply chain's just a stepping stone. Real money's in strategy or consulting. I didn't turn around, just added a little cream, stirred. Yeah, maybe, I said, keeping it vague. That always bought me a few seconds, but it didn't slow him down. I'm just saying, you're smart, he continued, but operations. That's treadmill work. You want equity, leverage. You gotta move up and out. By the time I sat back down, my dad had jumped in. Operations is a nice start, he said, with that careful tone he always used when pretending to be encouraging. But eventually, you gotta think bigger. Start leading teams, getting visibility. Start. Like I hadn't been leading teams for years. Like I hadn't signed off on more headcount in the last quarter than he ever managed in his entire sales career. Sean leaned in. Have you looked into product management? You've probably got transferable skills. If you understand ops, you can handle roadmap planning. Maybe even UX alignment. Britt sipped her mimosa like she was about to bless me with the golden answer. Honestly, she said, you'd kill it in law school. You're detail-oriented, right? I mean, contracts, negotiations, just a thought. They were all looking at me now, like a panel of judges on a show I never auditioned for. You don't have to stay stuck in logistics forever, Dean added. You're still young enough to pivot. Still young enough. Like the clock was ticking, like I was a carton of milk that was about to expire. I gave them all the same calm, unreadable expression I'd perfected in boardrooms and investor meetings. Neutral, professional, detached. It drove people crazy. Appreciate the input, I said. And that was it. I didn't defend myself. Didn't bother explaining that I already ran post-acquisition strategy across 5 states, that I had analysts reporting to me, legal teams waiting on my call, and clients that didn't sneeze without running it past me. Because what was the point? They weren't asking questions. They were giving answers to problems I didn't have. Before we go on, share which country or city you're watching from. My dad leaned back and crossed his arms. We just want you to reach your potential, that's all. As if I hadn't already blown past what they thought was possible for me. Years ago, Sean tapped something into his phone. I'll forward you this podcast, episode on tech pivots. Might give you some ideas. Britt nodded like she was co-signing a prescription. I'll connect you with my friend Laura. She moved from ops to regulatory, and now she's at Goldman. You never know. It just kept coming. Dean again. You could even start your own firm someday. Something boutique. You've got the attitude. Maya jumped in too. Even contracting. If you've got that experience, consulting firms eat that up. They all thought they were helping. Like this was a family favor. Like I was the stray cat on the porch, and they were dropping tips on how to catch a mouse. I gave a tight smile. Thanks. I'll keep all that in mind. Then I excused myself again, not to take a call this time, just to breathe. Because if I stayed, someone was going to say something about leaning in. And I was one inspirational quote away from flipping the damn table. I stepped out onto the back deck, dragging the screen door shut behind me. The noise of the kitchen died off, replaced by the soft buzz of cicadas and the neighbor's dog losing its mind 2 yards down. That's when I felt it, my phone vibrating hard in my pocket. I checked the screen. Text from Callie, my chief counsel. Board call moved up to 2 p.m. Need your decision on the Coastal Rail buyout terms. Of course they did. I looked at the time. 1:58. No room to stall. I walked down the steps, past the grill and the overgrown tomato plants, and stood at the far edge of the yard. Reception was better down there anyway. I hit dial. Valerie, we've got legal, compliance, and underwriting on, Callie said the second she picked up. You're live. 12 minutes. That's how long the call lasted. Not a second wasted. We went through the updated indemnification language. I flagged a non-compete clause that'd get us sued in Kentucky. The compliance guy flagged a logistics permit that hadn't cleared the state board yet. I told him I'd personally loop in the senator's office first thing Tuesday. Callie read off the final valuation. 3.1 billion. Buyout spread is 5.4%. Seller's rep wants a verbal by end of day. I ran the numbers again in my head. Quick. Nothing jumped. My voice didn't shake. I approve, I said. Proceed with closing prep. The line stayed quiet for half a beat. Then a round of acknowledgments. Legal first, then compliance, then Callie with her usual, copy that, Val. I hung up, took one breath, then walked back up the deck stairs like I'd just checked the weather. Inside, Dean was mid-rant. I'm telling you, small-time companies don't stand a chance anymore. If they don't modernize, they get eaten alive. Logistics is especially brutal. Thin margins, slow to pivot, no vision. He was pacing behind the kitchen island like he owned the place. They either automate or get wiped out. It's not personal. It's just business. Maya was nodding along like he was delivering gospel. Britt added something about market consolidation being inevitable. Sean chimed in, it's winner take all now. You scale or you die. I stood in the doorway, letting the screen door creak shut behind me. I didn't say a word. Just slipped back into my seat, picked up my water, and listened to them go off about industries they thought they understood. Before we continue, tell us, what city or country are you listening from right now? Dean was still going. Honestly, it's survival of the smartest. If you're not thinking 2 steps ahead, you're roadkill. He had no idea. None of them did. I'd just greenlit the acquisition of the 3rd largest rail operator in the Southeast. I had regulators, attorneys, and investors on speed dial. I negotiated asset-based loans before breakfast. And here I was, sitting between a fruit salad and a woman who thought law school was my next big move. The ridiculousness of it almost made me laugh. But I didn't, because this moment, this exact moment, was why I never told them. They'd never understand what I did. Not really, and they sure as hell wouldn't believe I did it better than most of the men they looked up to. So I sat still. Let Dean talk. Let the whole room nod along. Let them preach to me about the future of an industry I was about to reshape. Dean didn't miss a beat. You really gotta pivot soon, Val, he said, stabbing a fork into his eggs like he was making a point. Logistics ops will be automated in 5 years. It's a dead end if you stay put. I nodded like I was listening, even though his voice was starting to sound like static in my head. I felt my phone vibrate again in my lap. I didn't check it. Just think about it, Britt jumped in, pushing her empty plate aside. We've got a recruiter on retainer for supply-side strategy. I could connect you with someone in HR at our Chicago office, or even Boston. She smiled like she'd just handed me a lifeline. Like she didn't realize I owned the damn boat. Maya, sitting across from me with her glass of lemon water, added, Honestly, Val, you should consider New York. The market there is more aggressive, but it would challenge you. You'd thrive with the right exposure. I kept my tone polite. Thanks, I appreciate that. Because that's what you do when your family's trying to be helpful. You nod, you smile, you take the punches in soft packaging. Another buzz from my phone. This time, 3 in a row. That meant the finance team had hit a snag, or compliance found another filing error. Either way, I ignored it. Let them wait. I wasn't about to break the illusion for a bunch of people who already thought they had me figured out. You ever think about doing something international? Dean asked. Global supply chain's the future. You gotta position yourself now while you're still. Still young, I finished for him with a small grin. He laughed like we were sharing a joke. We weren't. Britt leaned forward again. There's a role opening next quarter in strategic procurement. Mid-six figures, stock options, mentorship under the VP. I looked her straight in the face and said, "That's really generous of you. Thank you." Because even though I didn't owe them my resume, I wasn't going to start a war at the brunch table. That would have made me the problem. Before we keep going, drop a comment with where you're watching from today. From the kitchen, I heard Maya talking low to my mom. She didn't bother whispering. "She's smart," she said, casual like she was saying the sky was blue. "She just doesn't have a plan." That's what worries me. My mom didn't respond, probably didn't know what to say, or didn't disagree. I sat back, crossed my legs, and looked around at my family like they were all staring at a painting they didn't understand. They were seeing the colors, maybe even the frame, but not the thing itself. I felt another buzz, then another. Coastal Rail was moving fast. Too fast. I'd deal with it in 20 minutes. Right now, I was too busy playing dumb to keep the peace. And the worst part? I was good at it. By the time dessert hit the table, I'd stopped checking my phone completely. Blackberry crumble, decaf coffee, a little whipped cream. Classic mom move. Safe, sweet, inoffensive. Just like I was supposed to be. Dean was still talking. Something about his new clinic location in Milwaukee. Sean was deep in some app prototype on his phone. Britt was picking berries off her plate and not eating them. Maya had moved on to her second glass of red. Then my phone rang. Loud, on the table. Everyone turned. Caller ID, Strategic Ops, Coral Bay Capital. I reached for it fast, but not fast enough. Sean leaned in just enough to read it. Britt stopped chewing. "Sorry, I have to take this," I said, standing up and answering before anyone could ask. I didn't step away. I should have, but I didn't. "Hey Val, it's Eric. The client wants to close Coastal Rail early. Can we move everything to next Friday?" His voice was clear, loud. My phone was on speaker. No clue why. Every head at the table turned toward me. Forks froze mid-air. I stayed calm. "Only if legal fast-tracks the rail safety review," I said, my voice flat. "Tell Claire I'll call Senator Whitaker's team first thing in the morning. We're not skipping protocol to please the seller." "Got it, I'll loop her in," Eric replied. "You're good with me pushing the date on the calendar." "Yes, but make sure we don't trigger any early termination penalties with Morgan Chase. They'll use that against us." "Understood." I ended the call, slipped the phone back into my pocket like nothing happened. The silence was brutal. Dean finally spoke. "Valerie, who was that? Before we go on, drop a quick comment with where you're watching from today." I looked around. All eyes on me now. Same people who spent the last 2 hours career coaching me like I was fresh out of undergrad. I gave them a shrug. "Work." Dean blinked. "Work." That didn't sound like sorting packages. Britt raised an eyebrow. "Senator Whitaker." Sean set his phone down, slowly. "What's Coastal Rail?" I grabbed my coffee and took a sip, like I hadn't just ripped the mask off in front of everyone. "Excuse me," I said, standing up again. "I'll explain. Just give me a minute." Then I walked straight to the sink, rinsed my plate off, and let them sit there stewing in confusion. I'd kept the peace all day, but the curtain had just lifted. When I turned back toward the table, every single person was still frozen, like the call hadn't ended, like they were still waiting for someone to explain what just happened. I wiped my hands on a dish towel, walked back over, and took my seat again. No one said a word, so I did. "I'm the managing director of strategic operations at Coral Bay Capital," I said, plain and steady. "We're a private equity firm. I oversee M&A for the logistics sector." Maya's jaw didn't just drop. It hung there. Britt actually put her wine glass down. That alone could have made national news. Dean leaned forward. "What do you mean oversee?" I looked him straight in the face. "I mean I lead the deals. I build them, negotiate them, close them. My team manages every part, from sourcing to regulatory filings to integration planning." Sean looked like someone had unplugged him. "Wait, you've been doing this how long?" 8 years, I said. "Started as an analyst right out of school, got promoted to associate in 2, VP in 3, managing director 2 years ago." No one moved. I could have dropped a fork and it would have sounded like a gunshot. Britt finally snapped out of it. "So, that call just now." "Finalizing Coastal Rail," I said. "It's a $3.1 billion acquisition. Freight rail operator. We've been negotiating with the seller's team for 6 months. I run point. Dean squinted at me like I was a puzzle he didn't like. You lead these deals. Personally. Yeah, I said. I'm the one who gives the final go when everything's aligned. Legal, compliance, risk, financing, it all runs through me before we close. Maya shook her head. How come we didn't know any of this? I shrugged. You never asked. Sean muttered, Damn. Before we keep going, tell us where you're watching from. It helps a lot. Britt grabbed her phone and started typing. I saw her screen flash. She was Googling. A second later, she froze. Oh my God, she said. You're in the Wall Street Journal. There's a whole article. Coral Bay Capital Eyes Midwest Expansion with Coastal Rail Deal, led by Valerie Green. Dean raised his eyebrows. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. Britt kept scrolling. There's more. You were quoted in Bloomberg and Forbes. You're on a panel with the CEO of DHL next month. I do a lot of panels, I said. It's part of the job. Maya looked like she was watching a car accident in slow motion. Wait, so when we were all giving you advice earlier? I nodded. Yeah, that. Dean exhaled hard, then leaned back like someone had knocked the wind out of him. Jesus. My mom, still standing by the sink, finally spoke. Valerie, why didn't you ever tell us? I looked at her. No bitterness, no smugness, just tired honesty. Because I didn't need to, I said, and because explaining it would have been harder than letting you all believe what you wanted. Nobody argued with that. They couldn't. Britt was still glued to her screen. This is real? How the hell did we miss this? You weren't looking, I said. That one hit. I could see it in all their faces. The slow realization that the girl they thought needed saving had been quietly building an empire behind the curtain. Dean broke the silence again. You got any openings for consultants? I smirked. Not the kind you do. He actually laughed. For once, no ego in it. Just disbelief. After Dean's laugh died down, it didn't take long. The questions started flying like someone had cut the brakes. What exactly do you do every day? Britt asked first. Her voice had changed. Less polished, more curious, almost respectful. Depends on the day, I said. Sometimes I'm in meetings with founders. Sometimes I'm negotiating with lenders. Sometimes I'm reviewing asset valuations or running post-acquisition strategy with integration teams. Sean leaned in. Wait, how many people report to you? Direct reports, 7. But my department touches about 90 people across 4 verticals. Maya blinked hard. 90. Give or take. Depends on the deal load. Britt chimed in again. And how many deals like Coastal Rail have you done? In the last 3 years, 14 closed, 6 in flight. Sean's eyes darted between me and his phone like he was trying to fact-check reality. So you're, pulling 7 figures and still driving that little Honda, he said. I didn't flinch. Yep. He stared at me like I'd just confessed to time travel. Why? Because it works, and I hate valet. That got a small laugh from the table, but it didn't kill the tension, not even close. Before we keep going, comment below with what country or city you're watching from right now. Maya set her wine glass down, slow and careful. Are you happy? That one stopped me for half a second. I looked at her, not defensive, not sarcastic, just honest. Yes, I said. I actually am. She nodded, almost like she didn't believe it, or maybe didn't understand it. Why didn't you ever tell us? Britt asked. All this time, I exhaled, because I like keeping work separate from family. And because no one here ever really asked what I do. They just assumed. No one argued. I looked around at the table, no one making eye contact, just chewing over the new reality like it didn't quite sit right. Sean shook his head, dazed. Jesus, I kept telling myself you just settled, that you gave up. You weren't the only one, I said. Britt winced a little. Maya spoke again. But we weren't trying to tear you down. I nodded. I know. But when you spend every family gathering getting advice you didn't ask for from people who don't know what you actually do, it gets old. That landed hard. Even Dean didn't have a comeback. I finally glanced over at my dad. He'd been quiet through all of it. He wasn't looking at me, He was staring down at his plate like it might explain something to him. I watched him for a beat. No anger, no resentment, just a dull kind of realization in his face, like he was trying to piece together how he'd missed all of it. You okay, Dad? He looked up, blinked a few times. He paused. I always thought you were smart, but I also thought you were drifting, like you were scared to commit to something real. I gave a small shrug. I committed, you just didn't see it. He nodded slowly. No, I didn't. And he didn't try to spin it. He didn't say he was proud. He didn't say I proved him wrong. He just sat there, realizing something important about his daughter that he probably should have known a long time ago. The whole vibe shifted. You could feel it in the air, like when a thunderstorm passes, but the clouds haven't quite cleared. No more coaching, no more polite suggestions or next steps. They were done talking at me. Now they were listening. Britt was the first to pivot. So, if someone wanted to start building a small portfolio, she said carefully, where would you suggest putting early money right now? Like, in this market? I didn't flinch. Depends what you're looking for. Short-term movement or long-term security. Logistics real estate's steady. Infrastructure funds are smart if you're not afraid to park it. She nodded fast, like she was in class. Okay, got it. That's really helpful. Dean cleared his throat. What about consulting? Coral Bay use independent guys at all. Not directly, I said. We contract through vetted firms. McKinsey, BCG, sometimes boutique shops. They don't like unknown variables. He raised an eyebrow. But if someone had sector experience, I gave him a small smile. You'd need a warm intro and a recent track record in turnarounds. Private equity doesn't gamble. He didn't argue, just nodded slowly like he'd just learned something he didn't like, but couldn't deny. Maya sat back in her chair, arms crossed, still watching me like she hadn't fully figured it out. Do you ever miss normal work? She asked. Like days that don't start with legal and end with regulators? I thought about it for a second. Sometimes, but I'd be bored in a week. That seemed to satisfy her, or at least shut her up for now. Before we keep going, share which country or city you're listening from right now. I glanced over at my mom. She hadn't said much since the call. She was rinsing off dishes, slowly, like her hands were on autopilot while her brain caught up. She looked over at me once, didn't say anything, just gave this small, almost confused smile, like she was looking at a stranger she used to know. I let her be. My phone buzzed again. This time, I checked it. Callie letting me know the revised Coastal Rail term sheet was uploaded. I slid it back in my pocket. Then I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was my dad. Come here, he said, just for a second. We stepped out into the hallway just outside the kitchen. He didn't waste time. I owe you an apology, he said. I kept thinking you were lost. Floating. I stayed quiet. Let him finish. You weren't? You were building something. I just didn't see it. I know, I said. I should have asked. Paid more attention. I nodded. You weren't the only one. He looked like he wanted to say more, but couldn't figure out how. It's okay, I told him. I never needed your approval, but I'm glad you finally know. He nodded. That was all he could do. We walked back in together, and no one said anything. But the way they looked at me, that said everything. By the time I got to my car, the sky was starting to turn orange, late summer haze, cicadas still buzzing like they didn't know how to shut up. I pulled out of my mom's driveway and hit the main road, letting the windows down halfway. No music, just air and thoughts. The inside of the car still smelled like takeout from 2 nights ago. A reminder of the life I usually return to after days like this. Quiet, self-contained, under control. But something was different now. I'd spent years splitting myself in two. There was work Valerie, structured, decisive, sharp as hell. And then family Valerie, soft-spoken, agreeable, harmless. A placeholder at every brunch table. Keeping them separate made things easier, simpler, safer. Today wrecked that. And it was messy, yeah. But it also felt clean, like pulling out a splinter that had been buried so deep, you stopped noticing the pain until it was gone. Before we wrap this up, comment below with where you're watching from. I'm curious who relates. I turned onto Lakeshore Drive and merged without hesitation. City lights were just starting to flicker on. Office buildings I'd negotiated from the inside now glowing from the outside like stage sets. They'd all looked at me different after the reveal. Some stunned, some embarrassed, some probably still trying to do the math. Let 'em. I wasn't looking for applause, or forgiveness, or some late blooming respect. I just didn't feel like hiding anymore. Maybe next Labor Day, they'll ask real questions. Not career trivia disguised as conversation, not thin advice pretending to be love, just curiosity. And maybe I'll answer more honestly. Because for the first time, it didn't feel like bragging. It felt like living one life. Mine, not split in half, not filtered for comfort, and damn, that felt good.